Good morning, church. To all of our church community, our friends, to really anyone who happens to find their way to this video, I welcome you. My name is Rob, and I'm the pastor of First Baptist Church of Peoria here in Illinois. Like many communities of faith all around the country, we are not meeting this morning. Instead, we have joined the nationwide effort to reduce the spread of the coronavirus. Our church is praying for and with people all over the world as everyone tries to navigate these new waters. You know, usually on Sunday mornings, my life is pretty hectic. I'm getting myself ready and I'm getting ready to preach, and we've got two kids that are running around our house like crazy, and of course, I won't lie, my wife's usually doing like 500% more work than I am. But usually it's pretty wild. But this morning, as I was leaving and just getting ready to kind of film this and do all this, my wife and kids were all sitting on the couch. They were watching Frozen 2 together. And so it was just different, you know. Apparently Frozen 2 came out early on Disney Plus, which is awesome and terrifying in the idea of self-quarantine world. We've got a 5-year-old girl and a 1.5-year-old boy, and they both really like Frozen, and so I'm worried about how much I'm gonna have to watch Frozen 2. But other than that, it is different. Today is just a different day. You know, I'm not putting on a mic. I'm not walking around and shaking people's hands or hearing their stories. They're not hearing my stories, and so it's just really kind of a new world for a lot of people of faith and people all over the world, no matter what they're involved in, what communities that they find their joy in being a part of. We are navigating different waters right now. So wherever you are, wherever this video finds you, if you're watching it, I hope you're safe, and I hope that you're with people that you love. Now, at First Baptist, we have been studying something called the 7 Signs of John. And these signs or miracles are really things that are done by Jesus to give us a glimpse into the world that God is making. They show us, a hope for the new kingdom and reveal to us the meaning of God's revolution. Now, plenty of first century God followers expected a military or at least a political revolution. But the signs in the Gospel of John, they direct us toward a revolution of the heart, a renewing of the spirit of humanity. We've already looked at, here at First Baptist, we've already looked at the first 2 signs. The first one being Jesus turning water into wine, exposing the celebratory nature of the God who can do all things. And the second sign is when the royal official comes to ask Jesus for the healing of his sick child back home. And this reveals the loving nature of the divine creator. Today, we look at the third sign of revolution. And if you want to read it, you can. It's found in the Gospel of John, chapter 5, verses 1 through 9. But here's the story. There was a festival taking place in Jerusalem, and Jesus traveled up for it. And while he was in Jerusalem, Jesus went to this well-known pool called Bethsaida. Now, this pool wasn't popular for recreational reasons, not like we would think of today. This was considered a place of healing. It was believed that as the waters moved when they were stirred, that people could be healed by them. And as Jesus walked around in this northern part of the city, strolling through the enormous crowd that had gathered there on this day, and they had big crowds every day at the pools of Bethsaida, but this day in particular was during a festival, so there were a lot of people in Jerusalem. And so Jesus was kind of witnessing and experiencing this huge crowd of people that were gathered there. He started to notice the forgotten ones, the forgotten people, the ones who needed the waters the most, but were unable to break through the commotion of these giant crowds to get to them. People who were sick or blind, some who had trouble walking, and some who were, paralyzed completely. As others rushed into the waters, many of them healthy, the most vulnerable were forgotten. Well, they were really unseen. Jesus walked up to one of them. He knelt on the ground and he started chatting with him. And he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" The man was clearly paralyzed, unable to walk, and maybe he thought Jesus was mocking him. At the very least, he thought Jesus was wondering why he wasn't getting into the waters. And so he answered him, "Sir, I don't have anyone who can put me in the water when it's stirred up. And when I try to get in, there's always someone ahead of me. And so I can't." Of course, we know that Jesus wasn't actually talking about the water. Jesus responded to him after he said this, "Well, get up, pick up your mat, and walk." And right then, the man did exactly that. We're told in the gospel that he stood up, his legs, he's using them for the first time in decades, and he picks up his mat and he starts walking. When I think of and remember this story, especially in the world in which I live today, I can't help but hear this guy's words echo, "There's always someone ahead of me." That sentiment could be shared by countless people in all sorts of situations. If you've ever felt forgotten or ignored or invisible, or maybe you're right out in front of everybody, but you know that there's something inside of you that you either hide because you're afraid to show it, or that you hide because of self-preservation, because you know the ones around you wouldn't accept it. If you've been unfairly passed up for something like an honor or a job or anything in between, really there's all kinds of ways. If you've had to watch as others discover something that you've been searching for your entire life, then you probably get it. Always someone ahead of me. That's what the man said to Jesus. And he was right. There was always someone ahead of him. That's how he lived every single day, going out to this place, hoping to find healing, and yet watching as all these people who didn't seem to really need the water as much as him made their way in. And he just had to watch. But this moment, this sign in the Gospel of John, it teaches us that God is the seer of the forgotten. The ones who find themselves sitting back and watching as the crowd moves forward. God sees them, and God sees you. Sometimes the best way that we can love others is by seeing them, by really seeing them. You see them, you help them, you serve them. And when you do that, you heal them. Maybe not in the way that we read in the Bible, but in the best ways that we can, we heal one another. It's really easy to feel forgotten in our world, especially in times like this, when everything is turned upside down, when nothing feels normal. But I do have hope. I have a lot of hope. You see, when Jesus gives these signs, they're not pointing to power. And that's what most people interpret miracles as simple power, but these are not just flex moments of divine power. Each time Jesus reaches through the veil of our world into the next and twists our understanding of reality, each and every time, it is a sign that is guiding us to a place of humanity. Jesus is constantly showing us what it means to be fully human, to rise up and be the best version of ourselves. If there was ever a revolution led by Jesus, it wasn't a military one or a religious one, and certainly not a moral revolution. It was a fight to set humanity free. Free to love one another with abundance, free to serve one another with compassion, free to lean into the divine calling to forgive, welcome, and embrace one another. It is a revolution to redeem the hearts of all people, no matter who you are or where you're from. The ones pushing to get into the water, the ones that are helplessly sitting on the wayside, or those that are just watching from the sidelines. Everyone is welcomed into this journey. to embrace freedom and equality and mercy for all. Look, I know that there's a lot of chaos out there. I'm not a fool, and I wouldn't pretend that it's a normal day. I mean, I'm sitting in this chapel by myself. I've seen the empty shelves. I've seen the run on masks and the really bizarre hoarding of toilet paper. I know that at times it feels like the crowds are just shoving people aside at Bethsaida. But that is not the entirety of all people. I have to believe that we are not defined by our worst moments, because I've seen beautiful things, beautiful moments of compassion and kindness happening all over the world. I've seen teachers that are creating programs to make sure that kids have enough food to eat while the schools are closed. I've seen neighbors that are serving the most elderly and other vulnerable members of their community, making sure that they have everything that they need. There are people, real people, that are fighting to find ways to serve one another, and that is humanity at its best. The world as it should be is a place where you neither rush into the waters, nor do you mock from the sidelines. It's a place where you see those who have been forgotten. You see them sitting and waiting and hoping for a better world. And then you reach out and become the better world. So as we journey together, as we navigate this life, let us be kind to one another. Let us have patience with one another. Let us choose grace as often as we possibly can. And let us strive to see the forgotten. If you're the praying type, then I'd like to pray for you now. God of all mercy, I ask that on this day, you would guide us to be people who see the forgotten, people that are bound by kindness and compassion above all things. Amen. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you soon. Be blessed.